boys and girls. Today we are on lesson 7.9. Today we are only having one lesson together, and this is on page 341. We will be talking about how to multiply mixed numbers, and this will be the last chapter we cover this week on chapter 7. So we're going to go ahead and write our objective under the essential question. So the objective of this lesson is we will multiply mixed numbers. And remember, what is a mixed number? Mixed numbers are numbers that have whole numbers and fractions, and they are mixed. So those are mixed numbers. So we have numbers that are greater than 1. It has a whole number and a fraction. Okay, so let's go ahead and unlock the problem. 1/3 of a 1/4 acre park has been reserved as a dog park. Find the number of acres that are used as a dog park. So acres is a measurement, right? And 1 acre is pretty big. And here it says that 1/3 of a 1/4 acre park has been reserved as a dog park. So they've created this place just for our doggies. Find the number of acres that are used as a dog park. So we're going to find 1/3, okay, and this is the key here. 1/3 of, remember, of means to multiply. So if you have this word problem, you knew that you would have 1/3 times 1/4 of the acre park to find the number of acres that are used as a dog park. There's a question. Let's answer it. Is the area of the dog park less than or greater than the area of the 1.25 acre park? And this is based off on lesson 7.8, right? Last lesson, remember? So if we're multiplying a fraction times a mixed number, would it be less than or greater than 1 1/4? So if you recall, okay, when we multiply by 1, it would have been the same. If we multiply two mixed numbers, it would have been greater than both factors. In this case, I'm multiplying a fraction times a mixed number, so if the product will be less than. Okay, in this case, then the product will be less than 1 1/4. Okay, so that is kind of like a review. Okay, from 7.8. Okay, so now one way that we're going to do this is to use a model. Okay, step number 1. Okay, here is our model, right? They put it on the side. We're going to use a model, and then we're going to actually multiply, just by, and we're going to be renaming the mixed number. So we're going to do it two ways. However, I want to focus that we will practice the second way during class. So on the first way, first step is to shade a model to represent the whole park. So the whole park is 1 1/4 acre of an acre, 1 1/4 of an acre. So that's the first thing we're going to represent. And so I'm gonna model that as columns, 1 1/4. So in this case, this is my whole. One rectangle represents a whole. In this case, the whole thing here is a 1. And then I want to represent 1/4. So that means that I'm cutting my rectangle into 4 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, because that's the denominator. And I'm only going to shade 1. So it's 1 out of those 4. So I'm going to go ahead and shade 1 out of 4. Okay, so that's my first step. Okay, the whole park is 1 1/4. I just remember I can't do this. Let's see. A 1 1/4. I'm gonna have to separate them. Now let's go to the second step. The second step is to shade the model again to represent the part of the park that is a dog park. So here it says that 1/3 of a fourth is the dog park. So we need to model 1/3, and we're going to model this on the opposite side, of our model. In this case, it would be here. We would represent 1/3. And so remember, the denominator tells us how many parts is it separated, or how many groups do we separate this by. And the numerator tells us how many of those groups will we shade. So we have 1/3. That means that we're going to be splitting both, we're going to be making 3 rows. So here we go, 1, and we want to go across to the second model. So we both rectangles. 1, 2, and then 3, right? 1, 2, 3. There's 3 rows. And now we're ready to shade, and we're only going to shade 1 out of those 3 rows. So we're shading this row and this. And when we multiply fractions, okay, the product is whatever we shade twice. Okay, but before we do that, let's answer some of these questions. Draw horizontal lines across each rectangle to show. And so we already showed, so when we wrote our rectangles, we showed thirds, right? So I'm going to go ahead and write it down because we showed thirds, right? When we draw our horizontal lines, okay, our rows. Now let's go ahead and Now we're going to go ahead and answer these questions. How many parts does each rectangle show? So basically, we're asking how many rectangles, and I'm talking about uh, how many parts does each rectangle show? Like how many squares are inside this rectangle. Once we shaded all the parts and made all of our uh, parts, and we divided the rectangle, how many parts do we show now in each um, rectangle? So that would be the squares inside, right? The little ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we show 12 parts on each rectangle. So we're showing 12. So that means that when we write a product, the denominator will be 12, right? So what fraction of the rectangle is shaded twice? So now we're looking at what is shaded twice, which is this part here. Okay, if you notice, it's kind of like a different type of greenish yellowish, okay, because we shaded this twice and this was turned out to be shaded twice. So we want to say what fraction of that did we shade twice. So we shaded twice from the first rectangle, 4 out of 12, right? Okay, 4 squares, 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 12, and 1, that's on the second rectangle, out of 12. Okay, 1 out of 12. Okay, now, um, what fraction represents all the parts which are shaded twice? So we want to have a fraction that represents all of it, not just the first rectangle, not just the second rectangle. So to do that, we're just going to add both fractions. 4/12 plus 1/12. And that is equal to 5/12. We have the same denominator. So that means that 5/12 of an acre has been set aside for the dog park. So the product of 1/3 times 1 and 1/4 is 5/12. That is the final answer. Okay, so we just did this using the model. Now we're going to do it doing renaming the mixed number as a fraction. This is where you have to really master it. We have to practice a lot to be able to multiply. So we're going to write the mixed number as a fraction greater than 1. So basically, when you multiply fractions, you cannot have mixed numbers. You cannot multiply with mixed numbers. You can when you're using a model, but not when you're multiplying fractions without the model. So the first thing we have to do is rewrite the mixed number as a fraction. How do we do that? Okay, so um, we're actually going backwards. Remember how we had a fraction greater than 1, and we would have to rewrite it as a mixed number. So now we're going the opposite way. So these are the steps you're going to do. Okay, our mixed number here is 1 and 1/4. Okay, you are going to multiply. Let's do this smaller, and actually let me use the right here. So I'm gonna write it right here, okay? Uh, so and then I'm gonna go a little bit smaller so it can fit. So my first step is to multiply the whole number times denominator. Okay, that's my first step. Actually, let me write it over here. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna multiply the whole number. In this case, it's 1 times the denominator, which is 4. Okay, 1 times 4 is 4. And then I'm gonna add that product with the numerator. Okay, so 1 times 4 is 4 plus 1 is 5. So then so after you add it, so the sum would be the numerator of your fraction greater than 1, and then the denominator stays the same. So make sure that you write this down in your notebook, because that's what we're going to go over tomorrow. So in this case, 1 times 4 equals 4. Add 1, that's 5. So our numerator is 5, and the denominator stays the same. So now I'm doing is multiply 1/3 times 5/4. And we follow the same to multiply fractions, where we multiply the numerator times the numerator, denominator times that denominator. In this case, we have 1 times 5, because that's what we found to be the numerator, and 1 times 5. And we could cross simplify, right? But if you look, 1 and 4 cannot be simplified, 5 and 3 cannot be simplified. So we just go 1 times 5 is 5, 3 times 4 is 12. And if you noticed, our answer matches to the one we had from when we multiplied using the model 5/12. So we got the same answer. So 1/3 times 1/4 is 5/12. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and practice some more. We're gonna do example 1, and we're not gonna use the distributive property for this, or should we? Yeah, I'll go over it. It's important that you know all of it anyway. Okay, so let's do the first example, then we'll do example 2, and then we'll practice with other questions on the next page. Okay, so we're right now on page 342, and we're on example 1. So example 1 says rename the whole number. So that's basically what we're doing when we're multiplying with whole numbers. With mixed numbers, we have to rename it so that it's a fraction greater than 1. So here we're multiplying 12 times 2 and 1/6. So we have a whole number times a mixed number. And basically, we will need to write 12 as a fraction. We already know that, right? That if you write 12 as a fraction, it will be 12 over 1. Okay, the denominator would be 1. So determine how the product will compare to the greater factor. So here we're practicing again, 7.8. First, we're going to think about how will the product look like? Will it be greater than 12? Will it be less than 12? So in this case, I can say that I have a whole number times a mixed number. So it's basically, I have two factors that are greater than 1. So it's like having two mixed numbers. So when I multiply two mixed numbers, because 12 is a whole number and it's greater than 1, when I have two mixed numbers, remember that the product is greater than both factors. So in this case, when we get our final answer, our product needs to be greater than 12. That's basically what we're saying. So now let's go ahead and multiply. We're going to write the whole number and mixed number as fractions. So 12, like I just said, when you write it as a fraction, will be 12 over 1. So they already wrote the 1 there for us. Now let's go ahead and just write 12. That would be the numerator. And now we need to write 2 1/6 as a fraction. So remember, to do that, step number 1, multiply the whole number times the denominator. 2 times 6 is 12. Okay, we have 12. Now step number 2, add the numerator. Okay, so that's what we have here, our steps. Add that product with the numerator. So our product was 12. We're going to add the numerator, which is 1. 12 plus 1. Okay, 12 from 2 times 6, 12, and then add 1 is 13. So the numerator of our fraction now is 13, and the denominator remains the same. In this case, it's 6. So now it's 13/6 when we write it as a fraction. We are now ready to multiply. But before we do that, I'm going to cross simplify. Because if I don't, and I'll show you what happens if I don't, okay? I will do it over here if I don't, so you can see what I get. If I don't, it just becomes a little harder. If I cross simplify, I'm going to compare, or I'm going to look at my numbers diagonally, okay? Diagonally means across, like an X, like the numerator from one fraction and the denominator from the other. So here I'm looking at 1 and 13. Can I simplify that? Is there a number I can divide both by the same number and, with getting even numbers? No, right? Not for 1 and 13. What about 12 and 6? Oh, yeah. I know that 12 is a multiple of 6. So I can divide both by 6. So 6 divided by 6 is 1. 12 divided by 6 is 2. So I'm cross-multiplied, and now I no longer use 6 or 12. Now I just multiply the numbers that I got after I simplified. So that will be 2 times 13 equals 26. And 1 times 1 is 1. So that means that it's actually a whole number, right? Because 26 over 1 is the same thing as 26. What happens if I had not cross-simplified? Well, let's look at it. We had 12 over 1. And we were, oops, what did I do? And we were multiplying, where are we? Here. We were multiplying by 13 over 6. So if I had not cross-multiplied, I would have to multiply 12 times 13. So in this case, if you didn't know how to do it, you would have to multiply it on the side. Let's see. You would have to multiply it on the side 12 times 13. So I would have to gone like this. Okay, and I would have multiplied 3 times 2 is 6. And then I would say 3 times 1 is 3. Okay, remember when I'm multiplying multi-digit numbers? Okay, I multiplied 13 times 3 times 12. So I basically multiply the ones. Then I add a 0 here. And then multiply 1 times 12. So 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 1 is 1. And then add, right? I'm out of space. So if I added, then the product would be 6 plus 0 is 6. So that would be my ones. 3 plus 2 is 5. And then the 1 in the hundreds. So I just added 36 plus 120. That's 156. So 12 times 13 is 156. Divided by, or not divided, well, over, the denominator would have been 1 times 6, which is 6. So now I would have had 156 over 6. But this can be simplified. First of all, it can be simplified because my numerator is greater than my denominator. So what I would have done is divided 156, okay, divided by 6. And so I would have done here another division. See how much work it is? I saved so much work by cross-simplifying. So now I'm going to think, okay, how many times does 6 fit into the 15? Times tables, or write your multiples, right? That's what you could do. 6, 12, 18. But 18 goes over, right? We want something closer to 15 because I know that didn't fit in the 1. So 12 will be the closest. So I'm going to use 12. So I'm going to be, so 6 goes into 15 2 times. So 2 times 12 equals 12. Oops. So now I'm going to subtract. Okay, 15 minus 12 is 3, and then I bring down the 6. How many times does the 6 fit into the 36? 6 times. And then 6 times 6 is 36. I subtract, and that is 0. So it goes in 26 times, so that's my final answer. See, and I got the same thing, but with less steps. Okay, let's look at the next example. And this next example is using the distributive property. I'm just covering there, but it's using the distributive property. So we rewrite the expression by using the distributive property. And so the distributive property basically takes apart one of the factors. In this case, it's going to break apart 4 and 1/8 so that I can separate the whole number. So here they're separating 16 times, and they're going to split the 4 and the 1/8. Okay, so we write 4 plus 1/8 in parentheses. Okay, now when we apply the distributive property, what we're going to do is add the products. So I'm going to multiply the 16 times 4, and then I'm going to add it to the product of 16 and 1/8. Okay, that's what the distributive property does. I multiply 16 by each number. So basically what I'm doing is multiplying 16 times 4 and add it to the product of 16 times 1/8. Okay, so 16 plus 4 times 4. What is 16 times 4? Okay, you're going to have to do your little math here. 16 times 4. So 4 times 6 is 24. 4 times 1 is 4, and 2 is 6. So that gave me 64, right? And then I multiply 16 times 1/8. And so to multiply that, I can write the whole number as a fraction, which is 16 over 1. And if you notice here, I can actually simplify, cross-simplify. I have 8 and 16 going diagonally. So I can divide both by 8. So that would be 8 divided by 8 is 1. 16 divided by 8 is 2. So that would be 2 times 1 is 2. 1 times 1 is 1. So basically, the product here of these fractions was 2. So now I just add 64 plus 2 equals 66. I wouldn't worry so much with the distributive property because we're going to be using the other way, but you want to know how, you want to be able to know how to do it several ways. So here we did it using the distributive property where we broke apart one of the factors. Let's go ahead and do a couple of examples here, and that would end our lesson today. Here we have find the product, write the product in simplest form, okay? Simplest form is very important if you don't want to get it wrong. Okay, so here we have 1 2/3 times 3 4/5. So step 1, if you have mixed numbers, gotta get rid of it. We have to write it as a fraction greater than 1. So we need to rename that fraction to a fraction greater than 1. Remember the steps. First, multiply the whole number times the denominator, and then we're gonna add the numerator. Okay, so 1 times 3 is 3. Add 2, and that's 5. So our first fraction is 5/3. Second fraction, we have 3 as a whole number, and then 5 is the denominator. So we multiply 3 times 5. 3 times 5 equals 15. After we multiply the whole number times the denominator, we will add the numerator. So 3 times 5 was 15, and now we're going to add 4. So 15 plus 4 equals 19. Now I am ready to multiply, but I'm going to cross simplify to make it easier, right? 5 times 5, not 5 times 5. To cross simplify, I'm going to look at diagonally, the numbers diagonally. So 5 and 5 can cancel out because I can divide both by 5 and I get 1, right? 5 divided by 5 is 1, 5 divided by 5 is 1. So now I'm going to multiply 1 times 19 is 19. 3 times 1 equals 3. Now all I have to do is rewrite this as a mixed number. Okay, that's part of simplifying. I'm going to rewrite it as a mixed number. So I'm going to divide 19 divided by 3. Okay, the numerator goes inside my division problem. My denominator is the divisor. So how many times does the 3 fit into the 19? Okay, so 3 goes into the 19 how many times? Well, you want to write your multiples, but I know that 3 times 6 is 18, right? 6 times 3 is 18. So then I subtract and I get 1 as the remainder. So my answer would be, remember that the remainder would be the numerator and the divisor the denominator. So that's 3. So my final answer is 6 and 1/3. Okay, let's go ahead and do one last problem. Number 2, we have 1 and 1/8 times 2 and 1/3. They are mixed numbers, so we need to rewrite these as a fraction. So how do we do that? Remember, multiply the whole number times the denominator. That's 1 times 8 is 8. Add the numerator, that's 9. That's 9/8. Okay, and then we multiply the next fraction. And this fraction, we're going to change it to a fraction greater than 1. So that's 2 times 3 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. And that will be over 3. Okay, so 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7. 7/3. So now that we change both, we can multiply. But before I multiply, I'm going to cross simplify. And I see here that I can simplify the 3 and the 9 because 9 is a multiple of 3. So I'm going to divide both by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 9, if I divide it by 3, is 3. So that will make it easier for me. 3 times 7. Now I multiply the numerator times the numerator. My new numerator here is 3 because I cross-simplified. 3 times 7 is 21. And then 8 times 1 is equal to 8. So now I just want to write this as a mixed number, 21/8. And I do that by dividing 21 by 8. How many times does the 8 fit into 21? Well, if you count by 8, 16, 24. 24 goes over. So it will go in 2 times because 2 times 8 is 16. And then I subtract. So 21 minus 16 is 5. And so I'm going to so my final answer, which is the remainder, will go over the divisor. So that's 5/8. So the final answer here is 2 and 5/8. Oops, I couldn't write that. 2 and 5/8. Okay, that's the final answer for that one.